Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing fine. We have the pleasure of having Dr. P. Santuram Raman Sivakumar. Sir is Principal Scientist, ICR Central Tuber Crop Research Institute, Kerala. And the topic chosen by our esteemed guest is scaling up of agriculture innovations, methodological perspectives. Sir, you are audible as well as visible, and also your presentation is also visible. Please start.
Okay, so good morning to all. Today I will be sharing one of our experience in uh, field intervention. This presentation is about the scaling up of agricultural innovation, the methodological perspective. I am not going to go in depth about the theory of the scaling up after a few slides. I will directly switch over to what we are doing in the field level in my institute at CTCRI. As you know, the scaling up is being used as a kind of buzzword, and you will be listening to this terminology more often in the recent times. This is one of the emerging concept in the area of agricultural extension, which is focusing more of what we say a broader perspective of how the innovations are being applied for achieving the societal objectives. So with this small introduction, I'll just directly go to the presentation. So when we talk about the scaling up of the agricultural innovations, we have to see we have a different concept of innovation when we look at the Rogers and Shoemaker's book in the diffusion of innovation theory. Probably that is the only theory what our extension people are knowing, but there are many theories in the adoption and the diffusion. Even there are yes, more than 15, 20 theories are there in adoption and diffusion, both in the cross-sectional and longitudinal. But this perspective, the scaling perspective, I'll tell what is a definition of innovation is basically a hardware, software, and hardware. So because any technology will have two components. Basically, we talk about the material and process technology. Like a material thing is something which is visible to us, and the process is something some we will do something which is it's a kind of step-by-step approach, a procedure. So there are some examples of hardware like pesticides and then machineries and all other vaccines and everything they are coming under the hardware. In software means the process technology, we call it as a service technologies. There are two types of software kind of technology. One is some processes are going into the commercialization platform. It is not coming to the extension. I think you know the difference between extension and the commercialization. Extension is basically both are the component of technology transfer. In extension, we give it a free of cost or low cost or at a nominal cost. But in case of commercialization, we are actually taking back the money invested in our technology. In case of technology transfer, in case of technology commercialization, the software component is the production of ethanol or production of any vaccine, which is fixing a high market demand and a high market price. So that will go to commercialization. When we come to the extension kind of software is like a service technologies, like doing some practices in dairy, which is not involved in any kind of material, only some management practice, or doing some kind of practice like spacing everything up, agro techniques, all are coming into the software component. And these two things which we are very common about it, but in scaling up, there is a third component because the technology per se is not working in a isolation, it is working in a system. Actually, it is not working because in the diffusion of innovation theory, we simply say that innovation is introduced into the system and it is spreading over a period of time. That is what we are trying to do it. But the basic fundamental mistake, I will say that the fundamental lacunae in diffusion of innovation theory is it is not looking at the how the technology is interacting. It is not about introducing the technology in a holistic perspective. In the scaling up, we are looking at much more than what we are doing. Scaling up involves both generation of the technology and implementation of the technology. So it is embracing the concepts of several recent developments in agricultural extension. So that means that something is introduced or not only introduced in the system, something is generated and introduced into the system, and over a period of time it creates a kind of changes in the system. That is, we are looking at the system change perspective in scaling up of the innovations. I mean to say that all kind of agricultural innovations need not be scaled up, but there are some specific agricultural innovations which has to be scaled up. One example is like a climate resilient technologies. Like how do you choose the technology for scaling up? So climate resilient technology, because you just see the degree of its damage or degree of means like the kind of population who are affected by the climate disasters. This is huge. So they need some kind of technology which will help them to mitigate the effects or get the coping capacity or becoming resilient. So that means that there are large number of population who want the technology, so you have to send this technology to the people in a very shortest period of time, because we cannot wait the diffusion process to complete after 5 years or 10 years. We want things to be done at the earliest, maybe in the 1 or 2 years, so that the people will be having the capacity to withstand or capacity to face any kind of adverse climatic conditions. The second thing which innovation which needs scaling up is biofortified varieties. So we all know that biofortified varieties are nothing but a common variety, common staple foods which are enriched with very essential micronutrient for the purpose of alleviating the micronutrient malnutrition. Okay, micronutrient malnutrition is one of the biggest issue in India as well as in other developing countries. And I think many of you know the extent. I will also be telling, because my presentation will be focusing on this micronutrient malnutrition only. I'll be explaining in detail. So that means that anything which needs to scale up means that something which the people, a large number of people need it, and they need at a very short period of time at a reasonable and affordable cost. Because I said that it is going into the extension perspective in extension mode, it is not going into the commercialization mode. Okay, let us see what exactly the scaling up. The definition of the scaling up is adaptation, uptake, and use of the innovations. Like I said, the many innovations, practices, technologies in the market with the policy arrangements across the broader communities of actors and geographies. So here you can see technology component is to practice, and the technologies are coming into the technology component, market component, policy component, community component, actors component, and the geography component. So there are many things which are embraced in the kind of scaling. I mean to say that scaling embraces a kind of interactive form of the technology transfer, or interactive form of the application of the technology, I'll say. Like we have been looking at the diffusion of innovations. Basically, it is a linear model. So the technology is developed somewhere by someone through some method where the stakeholders are not involved, and which is put into some kind of channel. And this technology has some kind of attributes. We call it as a technology attributes, relative advantage, and those kind of attributes. When it is introduced into the system by through some intermediaries like the extension agents, and it is going through the system through the process of imitation. We'll say that process of imitation, because adoption is basically a form of imitation. It is channeled through imitation. We then, based on the imitation process, when it starts work, we get the different kind of innovation category: innovator, early adopter, late adopter, laggards. Everybody comes into the picture at some stage, or it is getting an adoption curve is becoming a peak. It is reaching the peak. That is curve is reaching the peak. But in ideal conditions, it will not be like this, because when something is introduced into the system, because now we are saying we are not talking about introducing the technology into the system. We are saying like we have to, the research system, education system, and extension system, including the context with the farmer, they have to interact with the farmer. So we construct the technology by interaction. That is the meaning of the agricultural innovation system concept, which is promoted by Zifras, and Dr. Rashid Suleiman has done a many work. Dr. Rashid Suleiman and Dr. Hall, Andy Hall, has written a lot of things about agricultural information systems. So scaling up is working in a kind of agricultural information system. Scaling up is not working in the traditional linear model of the extension. That we will see what exactly is saying. Why we have to scale it up? Because nowadays a lot of money is being invested in the agricultural extension. So like people don't, we traditionally think that extension is knowledge, information dissemination, knowledge transfer, capacity building. No, extension is becoming a bigger level. That's a linear model. What we say that is simply disseminating the knowledge, building capacities, identifying competencies, and giving training. No, no, this is not the extension. Extension is something you facilitate the process of social change. You facilitate the process of the system change because we expect that technology should trigger something in the system, and in a long term there must be some sustainable changes in the system. That's what we target, because when we talk about sustainable changes, we are talking about the institutionalize of the changes. Like we introduce a project, we introduce a technological intervention in the field through a 3-year project or 5-year project. So you give a lot of planting material, you conduct so many FLDs, conduct so many campaigns, video films and publications, and then so many training programs. Everything is done, and finally in the 4th year, so you withdraw from the village and you go to the 6th year, nothing will be there. So this is something which is really a bothering thing. That's what we are going into, institutionalization of the benefits of the project. Like we talk about the self-help groups, which is more sustainable, and the farmer interest groups. Now recently we are talking about a farmer producer organization, because it is a kind of institutional system which is created to carry over the benefits of a project, carry over the benefits of the field intervention done in a period of 3 years or 5 years. So that is very important. But in case of scaling up, it is not the project mode. We are looking into a kind of program mode where because we want something to be reached to the ultimate person. One example is, which I am telling, in my institute, we have developed one biofortified sweet potato variety. That is a orange flushed sweet potato variety, which is addressing the vitamin A deficiency of the 19 years or less old children. Okay. So that means that if that variety has to be useful, because it is not about developing the variety, it has to be used, it has to address a public health issue. That public health issue is like you have to take the variety to the people who are actually suffering. Okay. So that is a point there. That is a point what we are trying to do is, that is called scaling up. Means in a shorter period of time, you have to multiply large quantity of the variety and take this to the people who are actually in need of that particular variety. So this is what we are going to talking about, the scaling up. So because why we are doing it is because developing any biofortified variety will take a lot of time, a lot of investment, because we use a lot of genetically modified tools, and then again a lot of biotechnology works. So much of investment is there. So people want to realize the benefits in terms of the addressing a societal problem. So because government of India says public micronutrient malnutrition is a public health issue. So you develop the biofortified variety, putting a lot of money into it. Then when variety is developed, it has to reach to the people. Every last mile, we say that the last mile of connectivity, it has to reach to every person in the grassroots in a very short period of time. That's why we are going for a scaling up approach. So there are 3 concepts in scaling up, scaling out, and scale deep. In agriculture, we are not going into the scale deep, because scale deep will make a total system transformation. Because only in educational interventions and the intervention which needs some kind of in-depth thing, there only we are going for the scaling up. Scaling deep, we are going into the scaling deep. Otherwise, we are not at all going to the scaling deep. Scaling up means you have to increase the in terms of number, speed, and size. That means that the technology is produced now, it has to reach to the ultimate, the grassroots level people in a very, very short period of time. So that means that you have to increase the numbers, increase the speed in which the technology is developed, and maximize the size of the impact, maximize the size of the coverage, maximize the size of the coverage. So that is very, very important at this level. Second one is scaling out. Scaling out means you are actually expanding, geographically spreading the use of a particular technology. That means that it is not only increasing in the numbers, not only speeding up the process of technology transfer or process of technology application. So it is covering the large number of geographical area, so that people will be using this particular technology in a large number of geographical area. So the third one is scaling deep is a system transformation that we are not going to talk about it at this level. So there are, when we talk about the scaling up of the agricultural innovation, there are two broad approaches are there. One is a linear approach, another one is an interactive approach. In linear approach, this is a traditional model of diffusion of innovation theory, where the innovation is being spread. Like innovation is developed somewhere and it is introduced into the system, it spreads to the system, and finally it is being used by a large number of people. So it is finally in this kind of a linear model of extension, technology is coming out with some kind of attributes. Like we talk about 5 technological attributes, means relative advantage, complexity, compatibility, so many things which we are talking about it. Then it is being introduced into the system through the extension methodologies, using the extension methodology, and people are adopting it, and we are measuring the adoption. After 5 years, we are measuring the impact. It is basically a linear process. Okay, but actually it doesn't work in that way, because there are many criticisms are being done on how the linear form of the intervention is being creating a negative impact. And nowadays a lot of new theories are coming up. The recent one is agricultural innovation systems, which is focusing on actually how the technology is being developed by interacting with the system. It is not about only transferring the technology. Agricultural innovation system takes about the total context in which the technology is developed, implemented, and applied, and also creating some kind of impact. It is a kind of interactive kind of system there. So this is the second wave. So first wave is extension, second wave is innovation and scaling up. So here what we are doing it, we are first finding out what works in a kind of similar system. We are doing in a very smaller scale. So we are trying to introduce the technology in a very smaller scale. By not only the technology, we are making a lot of stakeholder connections. Okay, we are identifying who are the actors who are involved in the particular. So suppose if I am introducing the biofortified sweet potato varieties in a particular region, I need to say one district, one aspirational district. So there I used to go. It is not about only conducting effort. We identify the partners, we make an MOU with them. So then once a biofortified varieties, some FLDs are being conducted. So that means that it is not only farmers, because you please remember this kind of varieties are very innovative technologies or new technologies. When you talk about the climate resilient varieties like STRV, stress tolerant rice variety, it is not a variety which is you will find commonly in anywhere. So it's a very kind of novel kind of variety or novel kind of technology which is trying to address some kind of issue. So that means that when you are saying farmers to grow it, you have to make sure that there are buyers for this particular technology. That means that we have to create the consumer awareness. That is also very, very important in case of scaling up. And again, when you are creating consumer awareness, you have to make sure that the variety is taken properly and it is sold properly, and then it is going to the consumers. That means that we have to create a kind of availability and access. So that means that you are targeting at the supply chain. When you are saying like I am promoting this biofortified sweet potato variety, the primary target for scaling up is you have to look at the supply chain. It is not like simply you go and conduct some FLD, come back. It is not like that. You have to create a look at the supply chain. You have to identify the actors and you have to try to get some kind of interlinkage with the actors. Then you try to make sure that the variety is introduced to the supply chain, it travels through the supply chain, and finally it reaches the consumers. So it all starts from giving the planting material, making interventions at the for market level interventions, then processing intervention, creating the entrepreneurship, then finally you have to create consumer awareness to make sure that there is a demand for this particular variety. So it all goes through some kind of system which is interactive system. So this is the difference between technology adoption perspective and scaling up perspective. In adoption perspective, the innovation is perceived as a technology with coming out with some kind of attributes. We are looking at the adoption index. We are looking at the how the technology is being adopted. So how much area is adopted and what is that means that you say that vertical and horizontal. Vertical means area expanded, horizontal means how much productivity is increased there. So we are looking at that component. But in scaling up of the innovations, you are looking at the interdependent practices involving technological, organizational, institutional change. Because in this case, you want the technology to be adopted. You want the technology should create some kind of impact. Sometimes technology may modify also. That's we call it as a reinvention. And again, the technology should be going to the supply chain, that value chain, what you are saying. Finally, it should reach to the consumer. So you are looking at the several stages in this level. It is innovation is not only about technology. Innovation is about technology. Innovation is about the society, organization. Innovation is about how you are going to introduce the process innovation. So there are several innovations are happening in the scaling up of the innovation stage. And the type of the scaling up process is, especially in technology adoption, it is only outscaling. And in case of scaling up of the innovation, it is the both scaling up, scaling out, and sometimes downscaling is also coming in case of the scaling up. And I also talked about the other methodologies. So there are not only scaling up, scaling out, and downscaling. So in levels of scaling is being considered in case of the technology adoption. Mainly it is concerned with the outcomes on the farm and the local level. So when you make in extension, we want to say the impact assessment, you just go to any farm household, do some farm household survey prior to intervention, and after the intervention, you just see that increase in productivity and increase in the farmer's income, and maybe doing some other kind of attributes you are taking from the farmers, and you are using some kind of econometric method to say that the person who is having the higher annual income, so the person who is having the good education is likely to more adopt this technology, or you are putting in a cross-sectional study, you are doing it. But the evaluation in this scaling up process, it's not like that. You have to look at the how the different interactions, how the outcomes are happening at the supply chain level or in the innovation system level. The other one is like stakeholder processes. Basically, when you look at the conventional extension methodology, you are supporting the individual decision making process through public sector extension. Farm and home contact, you are using several contact methods to reach out the individual farm households, and you are trying to see that how much of the income is increased. Ultimately, food security and the livelihood security we talk about, but ultimately we are looking everything at the one farm household level. But it is not like that in the scaling up of innovation, because when the innovation is going into the scaling up mode, it is going to several people, and it is creating several kind of impact at different levels. Okay, so you have to look at the multi-hold stakeholder process, how the network is built, how the network is functioning, how the social learning is happening, and because there are, if more than one person means there is a conflict, how the conflict management is happening, because the common conflict what we talk about is the intermediaries in the marketing channel and the farmers. We say that they eat out all the profit which farmers are supposed to do. So you have to make a kind of a harmonious interaction in this multi-stakeholder perspective. And finally, the drivers of scaling in technology adoption is it's a planned intervention, innovation diffusion, which is completely controlled by the person or the group which is implementing it. But in this case also, in scaling up also, it is a controlled process, but it is looking at a larger scale. But I will say that controlled in the sense means it is controlled by the stakeholders at a different level. But the person, the organization which is implementing, they don't have much control over the process where the scaling up is being done. Because a lot of people are involved, so many actors are involved, so much of relationships are involved, and so many institutions are involved in this scaling up process. So this is the difference between the extension perspective and the scaling up of innovation perspective. Okay, there are two mistakes, I will say two lacunae which we are finding the way we are measuring the adoption. So there are many things when we talk about adoption, because our methodologies, I mean to say, from my opinion, the way we are measuring adoption is not adequate. Because what happened, we are looking at the adoption in terms of the, like I said, that how many people are adopting it, how much percentage, what's the degree of technology is adopted. In case of the technology with multiple components there, we are looking into adoption index and other things. But technically, what we are supposed to look at the innovation decision process. It is not the adoption. Adoption is not something which is coming at the outcome, something which you are seeing it. But as an extension professional, you should be able to control the innovation decision process. So how a person is coming to know, because the one basic lacune we always do in adoption is not adoption is a consequence of something. So in the initial stage, when you look at this, a person is coming to know about the technology, he is doing some mental evaluation, and then he is also trying at his own level, and then he is convinced like this technology is really useful. Then he develops a kind of positive attitude towards the technology, and he creates a behavior intention to use the technology, and finally he is adopting the technology. So there is a whole process in the individual level, at the society level. We are actually ignoring the whole process. We are looking at the only the consequence of the innovation decision process. But we have to make an intervention to look at the innovation decision process. And unfortunately, the innovation decision process is happening not only at the individual level. In this perspective, scaling perspective, innovation decision process is happening at the larger level. It is very, very difficult to control it, but there are ways of managing it. So one simple example of our adoption studies is lack of universal application of the adoption variables. For example, we talk about the cattle ownership, or any kind of cattle ownership is something which is having a positive relationship with the adoption of some technology in zero tillage technology. This is a conservation agriculture kind of example. Somebody has conducted a study. They found that if a person is having a cattle, they are likely to adopt the zero tillage technology because they are putting a lot of investment in managing the cattle, and they are getting a lot of what we say like manures from cattle. And again, those things when they are having a lot of richness, and they are saying like zero tillage technology involves less number of labors at the initial stages. But when you go for a pesticide application in other cases, you need a kind of changes in the like a biological kind of products, and there are some kind of conservation agriculture which may needs a little bit more of a labor. Okay, so that means that they are able to adopt this technology because any shift from conventional agriculture to the organic agriculture is very expensive. It is not easy, and again, availability of organic manures, availability of biological forms of pesticides and fertilizers, and again lot and market. So a lot of problems are there. You have to invest a lot of money when you are converting into a organic farming, and again yield is also less at the initial stages. It takes about 3 to 5 years time. So only the people who are rich will be able to do it. So in that kind of study, they identified cattle ownership. In one study, they said that if there is a cattle ownership, there is a likelihood of a person adopting the conservation agriculture is more. In the same system, another study indicated the cattle ownership is negatively correlated. So there are many kind of relationships you will find in our Indian papers. You take out the Indian papers and you see that many papers will be saying like land holding size is directly proportional to the adoption. Sometimes they will say that a land holding size is negatively proportional to the adoption. So why such kind of contrary results are coming? I will say that if you do meta-analysis, if you try to do meta-analysis of the adoption of any kind of dairy or technologies or any agricultural technology in using the Indian papers, you will never get a proper result, because everybody takes a different kind of perspective and the results are very diverse. They are not, and again there is another trend is coming, like always we try to put a positive approach. You collect the data, so the correlation coefficient may be coming negative, or there may be no correlation, but if we manipulate the data and publish it, because the paper will not be published, because there is a stereotypic view which is created by our own faculty. So if you say that land holding size is more, means the people should have more adoption. It is not like that. So such kind of things, you will say that if you go for meta-analysis, you will finally, it will say that the effect size will be much more higher between the land holding size and the adoption. But you see that you might have taken samples from several systems, like a sustainable systems, commercial systems, the smallholder farmers, medium holder farmers, large holder farmers, because each and every context, the adoption differs. Some context, like the cattle ownership case, In some context, it is positive. In some context, it is negative. So it creates a problem for us because when you make a universal theory, extension theory, your research should produce the consistent results. Okay, here your result is producing inconsistent results, and again it is working in some system, it is not working in another system. That is because our linear model of looking at the technology application. When we go into take into the scaling up perspective, when you look into the agricultural innovation system perspective, you will be looking in a different way. You will say that how the technology is interacting with the social system. So in our Rogers model, we will not talk about how the technology is interacting with the system. We always talk about the technologies, how it is traveling through the system. We are not talking about how the technology is, we are simply talking about, there is a simple definition of reinvention. But reinvention is one of the very, very important concept in adoption study that I will say that whenever you are introducing any, because we have a lot of practical experiences, we have developed a mobile starch extraction machine for extracting starch from sweet potato in the field. So this machine has wheels. You take this to the field, you harvest the sweet potato, clean it, and directly you put it inside, and you will be getting the starch after 1 hour, depending upon the that solar, whatever the sunlight is there. But the same machine, when it was given to a farmers group in Odisha, after 1 year, we saw that the machine is becoming miniaturized. So that means that reinvention is happening in all kind of technologies. But unfortunately, our adoption studies will never talk about reinvention. And again, another thing is why reinvention is happening, because that technology is not suiting to the needs of the people. So that is why it means we are unable to develop any universal adoption theories based on the research conducted in India. That is one aspect. Second one is a household economic analysis. What we say, like one example is here in conservation agriculture. They say that in conservation agriculture there are less number of labor required, so labor cost will be reduced. Okay, but in conservation agriculture, in initial stages, you need a lot of farmyard manure and organic form of fertilizers. Okay, so that needs a lot of money. Okay, when the people are putting lot of money in organic fertilizers, and when there is a less number of, you look at the conservation agriculture practices fully. So in some practices need more investment, some practices you will get some reduction of cost. So this reduction of cost will be compensated with whatever you are doing with the initial stages. That is an idea in conservation agriculture. So they promoted this technology in Africa. What happened? So it worked with the large farmer, it failed with the small farmers because of two reasons. One is small farmers, they don't have sufficient money at the initial stage. You look at the expenditure statement or expenditure, if you see the seasonal calendar, you just do with the small farmers and the large farmers, you will find that at the initial stage of the cropping season, there farmers needs more money. So small farmers in India, you say that small farmers are not getting adequate seasonal loans. It is going to large farmers. So they are deprived of money. They are having a money shortage. So when you introduce conservation agriculture, which requires a lot of investment at the beginning, so farmers are unable to get the money. That means that they are not able to buy. Nowadays, it is not, that cow dung is not a cheap commodity. It is a very expensive commodity in cow dung. So conservation agriculture, if you want to promote it, but then you see that research has found out conservation agriculture was not adopted much by the small farmers because at the initial stages, there is a lot of investment required. Second one is they talk about the benefits of conservation agriculture is the reduced labor cost. When you reduce your labor cost, that means that you are getting more benefit. So that whatever cost you incurred will be made. But unfortunately, in small farmers' case, more of the labor is from family labor. So what is their money spent on hiring the labor for their own farm is very less. So that means that when you are projecting some kind of a technological package, when you promote the something, you are looking at the only some of the advantages which is not universally applicable across the systems. So there is a difference in small farmer and marginal farmer. So that means that there are something technologies interacting with the social system. So you have to look at the adoption in the whole perspective. Simply taking a farmer level adoption and doing some logistic regression or 2-bit model or using binary logic or pro-bit model, it will not work. It will not give you a clear picture. So you have to go for some kind of integration of the qualitative methodology, mixed methods approach. Then only you will be able to get some kind of basic fundamental understanding about how the technology works in the system. Okay, this is some examples about our adoption perspective. So this is a complex process of scaling up. There are a lot of papers on scaling up. So I'm not going to talk about the depth. So the very simple thing which I mean to say that you can see in the down technology configuration, regime configuration, and the wider societal environmental conditions. That means that technology is developed. You can see everywhere it is a double arrow. In extension, it will be a single arrow from here to here, here to here. So that means that technology configuration, there is a specific relation to the core aspects of the technology, like 5 technological attributes and others. So technology is being developed by interaction between the several stakeholders. That is, you have to see the scaling up perspective in the agricultural innovation system perspective, because basically scaling up looks at the agricultural, it's a little advanced version of the agricultural innovation system perspective. Can look at the regime perspective. What are all the dominant practices in the system which are specific to the core aspects? Finally, you are looking at the wider societal environmental conditions where it is being used. Okay, so I'm not going to explain this now. I will directly go to our scaling up of interventions, our CTCRA experiences. We have a program on promoting the biofortified varieties of the tuber crops. Initially, we initiated in the northeastern states, and now it is being expanded to the other states as well. I'm going to tell what kind of strategy we formulated and how it is being implemented. So this is basically a scaling up experience. So we are targeting the micronutrient malnutrition, which is a public health problem in India. There are several deficiencies, like in most of the cases you see, it is moderate to severe micronutrient deficiency, especially in the northeastern states. But if you look at this is the diagram which I have given here is for all India. So vitamin A deficiency in India is 3,30,000 child deaths are precipitated every year. Iodine deficiency, severe anemia, folic acid, zinc deficiency, iron deficiency. There are so many deficiencies are happening in India, and there is a biofortification program implemented by Harvest Plus. They are not working on sweet potato. They are working on zinc fortified, iron fortified, rice varieties and wheat varieties. They are mostly focusing on rice and wheat. Okay, so but our target is vitamin A. So because we have a solution to the vitamin A problem, which is faced many parts in India. So this is the recent reports about the vitamin A deficiency in India. So there are preschool children, school age children, and adolescents. Okay, you look at the vitamin A deficiency. If anything goes beyond the 20% is problematic. So in any deficiency which is going beyond the 20% is problematic. You can see school age children 5 to 9 years, vitamin A is 22%. So that means that it is a severe case of vitamin A deficiency. And in case of preschool children, it is border 18%. You look at the other deficiencies are definitely higher. Some folate deficiency, vitamin B12 deficiency, all our zinc deficiency is also higher in case of the adolescents. So India is suffering from micronutrient malnutrition. It's a very evident now. Earlier we were not having the data, but recently in 2018 there was a comprehensive national nutrition survey. So they developed a national level data. So you can look at the northeastern region where we are looking at the vitamin A deficiency. There is a line here in the graph. You can see anything goes above the line is in dangerous case. Like you see that Mizoram, Tripura, in India also, like the children 5 to 9 years. So that means that it is a very severe level of vitamin A deficiency which needs some kind of action. So normally what we go for vitamin A deficiency is we go for supplementation, or we go for supplementation means give the vitamin A drops, and you go for a fortification, vitamin A fortified foods in the midday meal scheme. And again you go for a biofortification. Biofortification means you are adding the vitamin A into the staple food in the particular region. Okay, so to attack this vitamin A deficiency, we created a concept that is already there in the world, rainbow diet. Rainbow diet is a specialized eating plan designed in the form of rainfall by carefully selecting the fresh and natural food with a specific color. That means that when there is a color, there is a micronutrient associated with this. That is a phytonutrient. There is a, I know you can get a lot of papers on rainbow diet there. And they are saying for healthy eating, 5 to 9 servings of fruits or vegetable per day is a recommended strategy by World Health Organization. You should eat at least 400 grams per day. Means 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables per day to lead a healthy life. So these are the different benefits of the different colorful nutrients. So just you can read it. I am not going to talk about it. So with this, we created a concept called the tuber crops rainbow diet. So there it is a conceptual plate. Now we are now trying to standardize the nutrient content in this plate. Okay, these are all fresh, different color of sweet potato. You can see purple color, orange color, yellow color, and white color. So each and every color has some kind of nutritional benefits. White and brown color is bone strength. Purple color is longevity, cancer prevention. That is high in anthocyanin. And orange color is rich in beta carotene, which is a precursor of vitamin A. Green is chlorophyll. It increases your digestion because in northeastern states they consume all parts of the sweet potato, including the green leaves. So we created a conceptual plate. This is a concept which we are promoting there in northeastern states. And these are the different varieties, sweet potato varieties, which are having the vitamin A and vitamin A content. You can see Booja, Boo Sona, Gauri, Sri Kanaga, Sri Ratna, Boo Kanti. So these are all having the vitamin A. It is about, I'll say, in Boo Sona, you can see 11.5 to 12.5 milligram per 100 gram. So we are recommending like if you eat 100 grams of boiled tubers per day, so in 3 months, you will be getting rid of the bitter spots. It's a vitamin A deficiency or any kind of night blindness, which is also part of the vitamin A deficiency. So we are promoting this kind of foods among the children in the northeastern states, and lately we are doing in other places also. And you can see purple flushed sweet potato. We are also having not only sweet potato, we also have a purple yam here, which is good in a good number in anthocyanin, which is proven to be a cancer prevention property. You can see the exact mechanism of cancer prevention. It is this research was conducted in our CTCRA itself. We found that it is having some cancer prevention property because why I mean to say is you cannot make a claim based on the theoretical thing. If you make a claim, you should have the data because nowadays when you are giving something to the society, we talk about the standards when you're in biofortification. So this is very important component. You have to create your own data to make a claim about your varieties. So, and again, we also created an array of biofortified processed foods. Why we did is basically biofortification is giving the fresh and boiled tuber, but we diversified it because the fresh tubers or boiled tubers are not liked by the children because unfortunately vitamin A deficiency is very high among the children. So that we created a kind of foods which are liked by children. You can see anthocyanin rich sweet potato noodles, anthocyanin rich sweet potato cake, sweet potato pasta, jam, jelly. So there are a lot of variations of the foods are there. So this kind of foods are prepared from biofortified varieties and they will be given to the children. So that we will do at a later stage. Initial stages we are not doing this. So the objectives of the Rainbow Diet campaign of the CTCRI is to promote the tuber crop based rainbow diet as a strategy for combating micronutrient malnutrition, create an ecosystem for facilitating farmers access towards biofortified varieties in collaboration with the grassroots agencies. We have 12 partners in the northeastern states. We are currently working with the 3 partners, Northeastern Hill University, and then ISA Research Complex for Northeastern Hills and Central Agriculture University. So we are having still below. Apart from these, we have 9 more partners from NGOs, KVK, state government, all. So we are going to sign an MOU with them, which is also in the process. And we are trying to build the capacities for the farmers to grow the biofortified sweet potato varieties. And we are also creating small-scale industries of functional foods, which are prepared from the biofortified varieties. So this is the strategy which we formed. This is the scaling up strategy of our Rainbow Diet campaign program. So this is based on the trans-theoretical model of our stages of change model given by Proska and De Clemente in 1984. So this theory is being applied in the northeastern states. So there are six stages: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and termination. In pre-contemplation, you are trying to promote this kind of varieties because that is pretty new to the system. So we are trying to promote whatever we have developed and in terms of the varieties, in terms of the value-added products. We are conducting campaigns in the northeastern region, and then we are also trying to make some kind of collaboration with the grassroots level agencies there at the pre-contemplation stage. In contemplation stage, the first and foremost important thing for any biofortified varieties, we have to multiply sufficient number of planting material. So we are implementing the seed village concept there in the second stage. So which is currently we are in the second stage now. So we are producing a lot of quality of planting material and being given to the farmers at the village level. We are conducting frontline demonstration and we are also conducting the capacity building program. So once it is done, the initial planting material is produced in sufficient quantity. So we will be switching over to the entrepreneurship development. Like we will be signing MOUs with other entrepreneurs through the incubation center, which is we are just starting now. So there we create the entrepreneurs based on the biofortified varieties, different biofortified varieties, so that the products will reach the children who are the vulnerable population. So they will be getting the foods which are rich in vitamin A. So finally, we will be terminating. This is the strategy which we are following it. So we are initializing desired behaviors and we are trying to bring the habitual behaviors and we are trying to terminate the problematic behavior. And this is one concept like in Kerala, one company which took technology from us, like a sweet potato pasta. They are saying like you have to throw the junk food. You have to eat healthy food. That is a advertisement motto of that company. The similar model will be replicated in the northeastern stage as well, northeastern states. So whatever I said, pre-contemplation stage, we have done at 2020 and 2021. So we have developed a sweet potato biofortification priority index in collaboration with College of Fisheries. That Dr. Mahesh Tengli, he has done this work along with us. And we are also, we have created a lot of consumer awareness programs. In the last year, I will show you whatever we have done it. We also conducted some stakeholder meetings because it is not about going and doing some consumer campaigns. That has to be sustainable and it has to go to the next stage. You have to be, you should have a partner there, and you should create a kind of ecosystem there so that everybody will help you. Like we have a good, especially in case of Arunachal Pradesh, we have very good stakeholder linkage there in Arunachal Pradesh because district collector is directly monitoring our program because our direct partner is KVK Anja. KVK Anja is implementing the program, but it is directly monitored by the district collector. So, and customizing the biofortified varieties to the consumer preferences, we have conducted 2 ethnic food festivals and recipe contests in both Meghalaya, in Tura district, and as well as in the Arunachal Pradesh in Anja district. So before doing it, we have developed a kind of index using the Harvest Plus methodology. This is called a sweet potato biofortification priority index. Using this index, you will be able to identify which states are having more priority. It is not like you will be seeing the vitamin A deficiency and you will be promoting. It is not like that. There is a kind of structured process. So the original index was developed by Harvest Plus. In general, they have created, but we customized in our team has customized in collaboration with College of Fisheries. We customized to identify the different states which needs first intervention. Like this output of this one is in which state you have to introduce the biofortified variety, which state you have to initiate the biofortification scaling up program. So that is an output of this index. So here we took 3 dimensions. One is a production subindex, consumption subindex, and the micronutrient deficiency subindex. So we calculated these 3 and we took the total for the biofortification priority index. So this is the formula which is used. Actually, we modified the formula given by the Harvest Plus. We are looking at the per capita area harvested. and the share of area allocated to each crop and the export share for, because this data was collected state wise. It is not for the country wise. It is collected for state wise. Per capita consumption is taken from the household consumption survey, and other data are taken from the secondary data from production statistics. And vitamin A deficiency subindex, because we focused only on vitamin A. So the proportion of children with serum retinol that was taken, and DALY means disability adjusted life years. We have taken the death due to diarrhea because that's a proxy for this. And the biofortification priority index was calculated using this formula: production subindex multiplied by consumption subindex square root into micronutrient deficiency subindex. So this is the result. So I'm not going to show the data because it is it is already under review in one journal. So you can see most of the eastern and the northeastern India are having this is the area where you have to make your biofortification scaling up, especially the sweet potato varieties. If you want to promote sweet potato varieties in India, which are having biofortified sweet potato variety, this is the only region you have to go and do it. So wherever the region you go and to promote your biofortified varieties, it will be useless activity, because based on the production area, based on the consumption, how much people are consuming it, how much they are deficient. These are all the states where only in these states only you have to promote the biofortified varieties, not in the other states. So this index is basically identifying the extension strategy. This is one of the first step in identifying the extension strategy. You have to go to, we have initiated this program in the northeastern states. We are also starting this program on Orissa and other Jharkhand and other places this year, because there is a high level of vitamin, not high level of vitamin A deficiency. They need more of biofortified varieties. And the stage one, in pre-contemplation stage, we have conducted a lot of campaigns. So we conducted rallies in two places. One is in Anja district, that is in school children. That is a school connect program. So we took the school children in the roads and we created a consumer awareness. And in Meghalaya, Tura, our target was the college students, less than 19 years of age. So we conducted two rallies in this. You can see different promotional materials used by the school children. And we also created a kind of nutritional garden in the Kupa village in Anja district. So these are the different publications which are being coming out of this work in the first year, but still it is being conducted. This is in Arunachal Pradesh. And we try to do the same thing in Tamil Nadu, though it is not a vitamin A deficient state. We got an opportunity to go for a Anganwadi Connect program. It is running in Anganwadi. So the primary thing is, if you don't connect with the Anganwadis, that biofortified varieties are not going to be accepted. So district collector of Tirunelveli district, he has asked us to make 5 nutritional gardens in Anganwadis. We created Anganwadis especially for biofortified varieties. Sweet potato, you can see this is the purple colored sweet potato variety which is promoted in Anganwadi. So we conducted local language training programs in Anganwadi in Tamil. 50 Anganwadi workers have participated. This will be done in northeastern states this year. This is coming in the stage 2, contemplation stage. And because once you are creating Anganwadi program, so you have to create a kind of a nodal seed plot. So if something goes wrong, because when sweet potato is given to Anganwadi, the germination rate problem will be there. You plant maybe 2 or 3 meter square, means 50 meter square. When you are planting it, some 50% will go out. So then you have to take the planting material from the nodal agency. Here the nodal agency is KVK. We created a seed plot in the KVK. So it will be a source of supply for the Anganwadis. Because we are sitting at Trivandrum, it is not possible to reach those places. So we are creating seed plots in our partner field so that the planting material will be produced and given to the people. Already seed plot is created in KVK Tenkasi, and it is also created in the College of Fisheries in Lembuchara in Tripura. So 2 seed plots were already created, because this will act as a supply point, because the very important component of the supply chain. And you can see that we have expanded the area of biofortified varieties in Arunachal Pradesh by 20 hectares. This is only 1 year work. and Tripura by 15 hectares. And we have created 4 seed villages, 3 in Arunachal Pradesh, 1 in Tripura. You can see how much of planting. We sent 2 truckloads of planting material to Tripura as well as Arunachal Pradesh in the last 2 years. We have conducted 14 capacity building programs, and 760 farmers and 260 stakeholders were trained. And the very important thing is we have given farmers some inputs for supply, because it's a kind of green revolution pathway, no? So unless and until you give some inputs as well as farm implements, equipments, they are not going to adopt our technology. That we have spent about 2,453 rupees per farmer in Tripura, 2,632.42 per farmer in Arunachal Pradesh for small tools and other benefits. Because again, we are also transferring money to the farmer's account to reimburse the labor cost. Because this is a very important. Once initially you have to encourage the farmers, this is what we do, motivating the farmers to use these technologies. Okay, so I am just abruptly closing it because this is the second stage, the latest stage what we have done for our program. So maybe if you want to see the benefits of the scaling up effort, maybe it will take another 3 to 4 years of time. But we are trying to expand the area under the biofortified varieties as well as enhance its benefits for eradicating the nutrition deficiency. So with this, I'll close my presentations, and maybe in the next after 2 years, I'll be able to give more update on what is going on in our work. This is the strategy we followed it, and I don't say that this is the best strategy ever implemented in scaling up, but maybe we'll be able to do the benefits of the scaling up only after 3 to 4 years. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now, if there are any interactions or questions from the participants, please ask. We have our resource person with us. Sir, there is a question in the chat. Sir, what would be better means of evaluation for knowing the adoption potential of technology? Okay.
So adoption potential of the technology, you have to go for the technology absorption capacity. And there is a concept of sustainable recommendation domains. There is a concept of recommendation domains given by the CIMMYT long ago. And nowadays the recommendation domains are being done by integrating multiple methodologies. You please read about the sustainable recommendation domains. So what they do is you take the technology, and you, because normally in technology development there are on-farm trials, multi-location trials, especially when I talk about the variety. Okay, then when a variety is coming up, we are going for the, in KVKs also we are doing some kind of trials, on-farm trials, and we are trying to identify whether the technology is suitable for this particular system. Then once your technology is identified, we are going for the frontline demonstration. This is what the technology development as well as the dissemination process works. So what happens in your frontline demonstrations, you might have conducted frontline demonstrations in different agroclimatic zones. In some frontline demonstration, the technology works well. In some frontline demonstration, I am not talking about the increasing in the yield. I am talking about the spread of the technology. Like you are doing FLD 1 year, normally FLD should be conducted in 2 years. 1 year FLD, that depends upon the nature of the crop. At least 2 season data is very much important. Otherwise, it is not acceptable. So in 2 season data, you see that in one particular system, there is a lot of enthusiasm among the farmer who are not involved in the project. Okay, that means that the technology is spreading. There is a lot of demand is coming. In other systems, it is not happening. So then what you have to do is, you have to map that particular system. Means what is a technology characteristics, how much yield was produced, why farmers are demanding more technology, more of this particular variety, and what are the marketing systems, what is the supply chain in that area. You make an in-depth study in the successful areas, and then what they do is now in India they are taking GIS platform. In GIS they are feeding the data about the area, the data which you have generated for your successful FLD. Same data they are taking from other agroclimatic zones. They are feeding into this using the GIS format. So there is a software called visualization software called Tableau. So it identifies the areas which are similar systems. I'm not talking about agroclimatic zone. I am talking about the soil conditions, climatic conditions, similar market conditions, and the similar consumption patterns. The software identifies the place located outside the your successful place. So that is called your recommendation domain. If you go there and you promote your variety, it is definitely going to be a success. Rather than going and arbitrarily promoting the same variety in a different kind of region, you are going to waste your money, because policymakers are not interested in nowadays they are asking how much of FLD is conducted, how much training you conducted, how many farmers participated, but after 2 years they are going to ask how much area has expanded, how many farmers have created assets using your FLDs. So that means that you have to invest money in a very logical and a reasonable way. It is not, it is a taxpayers money.
Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, this is Dr. Ramesh, sir,
Yeah, please, sir.
Senior Scientist and Head, KVK, Dakshina Kannada, Mangalore, sir, Karnataka.
Okay.
So, in our district, we have a good number of tribal population, sir.
Okay.
In fact, they consume the locally available varieties, sir.
Okay.
So, we would like to introduce the high yielding variety of this one, sir, tuber crops. Sir.
Okay. You
What
send us a request
variety will be
and
suitable for the coastal region,
you
sir?
try to
Yes.
see that what is their consumption patterns and market condition, because simply by conducting FLD, we may put, you may fill up your assessment pro forma report something for your KVK, but that will not work. So you have to see that the technology is really, you look at the market. I will give a classic example in the case of Kerala. So last year in Subiksha Kerala program, government has asked us to send the truckload of planting material to the farmers in the during the COVID period. And there is a unique problem in Kerala that so many NRIs returned to Kerala last year. More than 5 to 6 lakhs NRIs returned to Kerala. They become jobless. So government wants to promote the tuber crop and other crop cultivation to them. We send truckloads of materials to those people. But what happened this year? There is a lot of cassava production, and the normal prices, market price is 20 rupees per kg. It is coming 3 rupees per kg now. So that means that you want to create a kind of employment for the people who return from other other foreign country. Ultimately, it has disturbed the market. So such kind of things should not happen. You have to make sure that what kind of varieties the farmers are, whether it is a yam variety or whether it is a sweet potato variety, whether it is a elephant foot yam, you have to identify it, and what kind of prefer variety types they prefer, because culinary quality is very important. You try to see what kind of thing, then we will give you a 2-3 varieties together. So you test it and you just see that which one is the better, then you start promoting it. That will be the better option.
Sir, in fact, I worked in Northeast, sir. Adjacent to Anjao, sir. There is one place called Tejo, and after that there is a place called Roing, sir, Lower Dibangal district.
Yeah. Sir, I think I met you there, no? In Roing, we came here. We came there 3 years back. Yes, you are the KVK Roing PC, no?
Yes, sir. PC, sir. I was there up to 2018 June, sir.
So we were searching for Amorpholus konjac in Roing.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's a very good place.
There, sir. In fact, we brought one this variety, sir, Gajendra.
Yeah.
We planted in our KVK campus only, sir. Tapioca.
Under ASRP, I think you might have brought through Dr. James George. Yeah.
Yes, sir. ASRP.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Nice meeting, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other question
So any
or
other
query?
questions?
Any interaction? Dr. MS,
thank you, Dr. Sethuraman. Thank you very much for nice presentation. And certainly would like to connect with you through Krishi Vigyan Kendras. I'm working at Atari Jodhpur.
Yes, sir.
As I have not seen Rajasthan, Gujarat, these states in your study, so I will also try to be a part of that. because
Yes, sir.
government is also focusing on these fortified varieties. Everything is there.
Mhm.
And this is a very innovative kind of things. You are doing a wonderful job. So I will request you to work in networking mode with Ataris. So it is better to include some potential KVKs. In Rajasthan also we have tribal areas, Udaipur, Banswara, so many districts are here. In Gujarat also.
Sir, Gujarat, we are starting work this year in KVK Bhuj.
KVK Bhuj,
Yeah,
okay.
because
Kajri
yeah,
KVK, okay.
yes, sir. So because there is a demand for cassava, because cassava is identified as a biofuel crop by Government of India. So there is going to be a huge demand for biofuel in the next few years, and we
Yeah.
have a technology for producing biofuel. And now the technology is hot cake. We are charging 15 lakh rupees. 4 companies are ready to buy it. So that we are from, because that is a non-traditional area, there is a lot of scope, especially in Gujarat, Maharashtra.
Yes,
So
yes.
that will work, sir. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Any other query or question? Sir, I don't think there are any further queries
Yes.
or questions. It was it was a great presentation. On behalf of our participants and on behalf of our organizing committee, we would want to extend our gratitude to you, sir, for being with us and sharing this wonderful knowledge through this presentation and the interaction at the end. Thank you very much, sir, for being with
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, participants. Can join at 2:30 again for the next session. Thank you.